Uh, Minu Ilam Makwait, welcome everybody. My name is Ted Cadwallader. I'm your co-host today of Learning with Syeyutsus. This program, the Learning with Syeyutsus, is an Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools project trying to implement Truth and Reconciliation's call to Action 57, raising awareness and knowledge for all public servants around Indigenous languages, cultures, and histories. My two co-hosts, Syeyutsus Stephanie Johnson and Sam Cotton, Lawrence Mitchell, welcome to you both. And as always, on this traditional territory, I want to turn it over to Sam Cotton to welcome you all here.
Height apka makswait, height apka kwasiala kwa inamet, tanakwel, anthat titwiat an steetlum atan kakip atanakwel, height apka. Cats off main height at a hyle eight squale a tanakwel. Height at a hyle I mit tamach a tanakwel itamok squale. Height snitali a tanakwel hwem amastal with the eight squalwen. Hwem eight watal. Tatal at the masias titel not. Hwem metal a tanakwel itamok squale. Titwiat an kikelis mosdimoch. Hwem slachen tanashwalakwa. Titwiat an kaki mosdimoch sanyu at the kaki out. Hwem slata kanstoch tana shwalakwa. Heichka kutstwa tanatamach tanakwel itamok squale. Nawash kwam kwams at the salitst zita siam heichka. Oh, 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 hey. Oh, 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 hey. Aichka Syeyutsus Siem Heights up, come up, wait, heights up.
It's my brother. That's always nice. Land appreciates hearing the language, right? And that bring that prayer for our ancestors to come and join us and our broad family. Also want to raise my hands today to our relatives at the Vancouver Island Regional Libraries. If you're joining us today from a library, way to go. And also raise our hands to our partners, UBC Press, who connects us with all of these amazing authors we've had over the last number of years to help us do our work around Call to Action 57. We are joined today by, I'm going to say author, a lawyer, professor, instructor, and language learner, Darwin Hanna, to talk a little bit about his work that he did a number of years ago with Mamie Henry in gathering some of the stories and the language from around the Chatmok territory. Welcome, Darwin.
Okay, Kukshamu for the introduction, and Kukshamu Lawrence for the song. And I'd like to acknowledge today I'm on the lands of the Musqueam, Syeyutsus, and Squamish nations. I'd like to recognize their unceded territory. And I'm going to do a share screen and just give you a traditional introduction. So this is every week we have a inhabitants language class, and we use this slide deck to provide an aid to the learners to provide a traditional introduction of inhabitants. And so Akmatlo, Injawa Cheshneya and Shquest, Lynn and Skihiza, Herbert Hanna, Inskakaza, Fred Hanna and Shpapaza, Beatrice Hanna and Yaya, Flu Nikaiken, Insakamakin, Homish, Yedek Shadish. Good afternoon. My Insakamak name is Cheshneya. It was given to me by my grandparents. And my parents are Lynn and Buddy Hanna. My grandparents are Fred and Beatrice Hanna. I'm from a place called Nicola, which is on the west side of the Fraser River, which is just near Lytton. To get to Nicola, you have to take a 2-car ferry across the Fraser River or walk the train bridge. And and my nation is the Intlakamak. Our territory extends from Spasm north to Boston Bar to Lytton and to 30 mile just south of Lowett, extending east to Smith's Bridge and Ashcroft, and throughout the Nicola Valley, and extends into the United States west to Mount Baker. And that's our territory. And I'm honored to be here to share some of my perspective on the publication I helped publish back in 1995. This publication was commenced in the year 1992. I received a Canada Council grant I was quite young then. I was only 23 years of age. So when I reflect back on that early time period, sort of marvel how I was able to work with the elders and achieve this book. And so the book that's on the screen here, these copies were at the band school. The school is called Stein Valley Economic School, based out of Lytton. And so I presented there a few years back, I think it's 2016. And I provided these copies back in around the year, I think around the late 1990s or early 2000s. So they still had a collection of the book. At that time period, I had received a call from a librarian from an art school, and they wanted to source out a copy of our tellings. And I contacted UBC Press, and they said it's out of print, and there's no more copies available. And so I worked at UBC Press, took around 4 years to have the book republished. To my understanding, the book, the prints were, I guess, lost. The digital copy was also lost. So it was just completely lost. So it had to be rebuilt. And so it was done, but it took a while. It took some persuasion. And the reason why we really pushed forward to having the book republished because it was still utilized in the band schools. And to this day, I still receive inquiries on a regular basis regarding how to access our talents. And so it's still utilized in the school system. And to honor the elders and to honor the learners, we made best efforts to have the book republished. I'd like to acknowledge UBC Press for taking steps to having the book republished. And so it's, it's part of our community. And it's really, it's a sharing of our knowledge from the elders. And it helps provide pride to our students because a lot of the students, a lot of their grandparents or great-grandparents are profiled in the book. In the book, we 22 elders worked with us to share their stories. The main stories were shared in an Inhabitants machine and were translated by certain language experts, including Mamie Henry, Dorothy Ursaki, Marian Bent. And we had some 26 spectacular creation stories about how Shinkiap, how Coyote created the world with other animals at the time, transformers, about how the world came to be as we know it today, and it's sort of the pre-human time. And then we also have stories that are known as Shvilham. Shvilham are known as the true stories of our nation. So these stories, growing up, I'd go to my grandparents' house. On the right-hand side, you'll see a thea, which is a basket, and the strap is a supin. And so my dad and grandparents would tell a lot of stories about the thea, about the basket. The basket is embedded in all of our Christian stories and all of our cultural teachings. So I learned lots about basket making, how baskets were used for cooking, for storage, for traveling. And also they were part of the project whereby the basket was utilized for travel from the sky and so on. And each family had their own expert basket maker, and these were passed down. And so this basket was made by my great aunt, and my sister is the caretaker of this lovely basket. And it was made by cedar root, and the weaving was by, it's a coiled root basket, and the design is to say, the coloring is from the grass that were dyed black and dyed red. through special process of dyeing. On the left-hand side is the Stein River Valley. And the Stein was a training ground for our Shiknam, our Indian doctors, training ground for our youth. And I spent a lot of time there earlier when I was younger. And so that's now a protected park, and where people still use this land, the Stein Valley, for training and for teachings, and for also harvesting as well. Also for cleansing. And so a lot of the stories are land-based and also based on teachings from the water. In the last few years, I've been volunteering with the Paleweek Language Foundation Society. And so I learned that our language was becoming extinct or endangered. I thought, I'm going to volunteer my time, I'm going to volunteer to help our language. So I helped form the Paleweek Society. We have a circle of elders, circle of team members, circle of board members, and we meet on a regular basis to develop curriculum, have classes, and have online activities. And this was incorporated as a society in the year 2017. And we receive funding from the First Peoples Cultural Council. And we also have a First Voices site. And so we do recordings, and the recordings are hosted on the First Voices site. You need to be a community member to access that site. And so we have over 400 words, hundreds of phrases, and we have many stories posted. And the design of our Paleweek is, you see the logo on the left there, is based upon a basket design. And Paleweek means working together as one. So you're working in unity as one. So when you're in a circle, you're working together as one. On the left-hand side is a rock painting of two warriors in battle in the Stein Valley. And I just have this picture here to show that it's a constant battle to try to move forward, to advance our culture, our way of life, our language, to have it passed on to the next generation. And we're battling with the Crown for recognition of our title, battling with the Crown regarding recognition of our languages, battling with the Crown for recognition of our culture, to ensure that our way of life continues on. So everybody has a warrior in them, and we all sort of battle every day to move forward, to advance the way of life of our people, to honor our people. On the right-hand side is I believe it's a game that's posted in the American Museum of Natural History in New York. So to this day, we have a lot of our artifacts taken from our community elsewhere in the world, and we're trying to repatriate a lot of our artifacts. That's part of our language. We're trying to repatriate our language so that we can continue on with our stories and way of life. And one of our projects we're working on right now, this is a place name map in our territory. This is mostly out of the Tlecumchin area, out of Lytton. Our society has documented 30 place names that we have the phonetics funds for. If you click on any of those icons, you'll bring up the story, the pronunciation, and the teachings behind each of these place names. And so the one is Patani to the bottom right, and then also Palashko, which is a place where I got married. So these are place names in our territory, and we have actually many more. This is just sort of the very beginning of this project. So this, we had our Ronnie developed this just a few days ago. So I thought I'd just show a sample work for our nation. So it's still very early stages. But we literally have hundreds of place names that where people lived, where we harvested, carried out spiritual practices, and so on. during the last few years, we had a partnership with the UBC First Nations Endangered Languages Program. And so we had worked with some students from UBC in the linguistic department. And they came to Lytton and worked with the elders on some stories. And so we developed a booklet. And so in the book, our tellings, the elders have passed on, but their Inkashekan, their family is still here with us today. So the Inkashekan, our family, the next generation have been working with us to develop booklets on our culture and our language in Syeyutsus. And so this is about Cha-Cha, little sister, her Sia, her basket. And so it's a 13-page story about her basket. And so we, part of our classes for Syeyutsus, we go through these slides with our elders. They'll say the phrase in Syeyutsus, and then the students repeat the phrase. And so this is just one of the samples of Cha-Cha placing Stwen in her Sia. And so, yeah, so this is just a, yeah, it's a nice little booklet that was done. So just in reference to the rights of our people, reference to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, people's right to revitalize, use, develop, and transmit to future generations our languages, our oral traditions, and to retain our own names for our communities. And so, so this is about being Ntlakamak proud. I am proud to be Ntlakamak. And right now we're going through a process of decolonization. We know that our languages are endangered, and we're making best efforts to try to change it so that our language is now flourishing. And so we know that you know, the imposition of the residential school had huge impacts on our community. In Lytton, we had St. George's. That school closed in the year 1978, and we have lasting impacts of that residential school on our community and our nation and all attendees. And so we're going through a process of healing to become, you know, proud, to deal with the impacts of the school, and trying to you know, reestablish our connections. And it takes, you know, a whole community, the whole circle to move forward. And so when I was writing the book, I don't think you'll actually see the word reconciliation in the introduction. I talked about the overview of our way of life, the impacts of colonization. At that time, the word reconciliation was not part of our parlance at the time. And so now it's part of ordinary speech. And so, you know, the book is really about, you know, reconciliation, about sharing the knowledge and providing pride to the next generation. And at the time, it was a challenge because we knew in our community of the abuses in the residential school. And it was really sensitive regarding how do we share that knowledge, and how do we share the other atrocities that have happened. And so, so there's a lot more stories out there. This is just a sampling of stories, just one snapshot. The elders have many, many stories, and just a small glimpse into our way of life. And the book has been utilized in various processes. It's been provided to the advanced schools. I recently purchased 60 books and provide 2 shipments out of 15 and 15 to 2 band schools. And I have 2 more boxes to be shipped out to 2 more band schools in our territory, so that they'll have a set for their students. And There's a lot of work done at the community and nation level to also, pass on the teachings. And so the irony is that in the book, it's in Shamashtin, which is the English language. So we have the stories translated from Inthlikamach Chin into Shamashtin. And now what's happening is that we're actually going to the next process. We're having the stories told in Inthlikamach Chin and shared in Inthlikamach Chin, and so that the students, next generation, can learn the stories in Inthlikamach Chin. It's for retention of our way of life. And so we sort of went full circle, and still a lot of work ahead. It never ends. And the stories are, if you read them, some of them you think that may be incomplete, but you have to hear the stories over and over, and some of them are connected, some of them are part of a longer story. There are other historic resources out there with the stories, and it's like trying to piece it together, and it's a lifelong journey to piece together stories, to try to find, your role in your nation and about how you give back to your nation. And so that's just and on the cover book. The book is some trees, and these trees were bent backward over Kelly's son, Shinkep's son, and Flickensham turned around, and when we turned around, that's where the trees are turned back. The sad thing, though, is that these trees were actually cut down by a logging company in the early 2000s. And so the people on the ground do not know the significance of our protect, and do not know about this story, and these trees were cut down for commercial purposes. And so the one thing about having there's a whole issue regarding should things be kept confidential and private? How do you share knowledge? It's always a sensitive thing. When I was doing the book, we had to receive the informed consent of the elders, of the storytellers who shared their stories. At that time, it was a very early stages of informed consent, and so we had to have the form signed off, so that if the elder had passed on, we had to get informed consent from their family. So it's quite a process to getting that consent, and so it's I never knew how the book would turn out, but it's been quite well embraced by the schools, by the community. It's been utilized to advance specific claims tribunal settlements and cases. I was on a business call the other week, and the community was trying to get a cannabis license, and one of the business proponents, who is non-native, was referencing a story from the book. And so it's still out there, and so I just have to, my battery's running low, so I'm going to plug in my computer real quick here and send a message. Just give me 1 second here.
Darwin, we've had guests on in other parts of our stories, and we had Dr. Joanne Archibald come and talk about Indigenous story work, and how some of the stories that are shared might seem incomplete, but that's just an invitation for you to become involved in the story and its ongoing nature. We also have had a person who wrote the introduction for your book, Wendy Wickwire. Dr. Wickwire joined us in one of our seasons to talk about James Tate and the work that's been done up through that territory as well. I've greatly appreciated the inclusion of the Nlaka'pamux, the language of that area, because Lawrence, myself, Stephanie, we see the significance of the any work that's done to revitalize and maintain our languages on the territories that they originated on, because so much effort has been done to try to wipe them off the map. So I know that the land of that place and the ancestors of that place appreciate the work to try to keep that language walking.
Yes, I'd like to also recognize Wendy Wickwire. She was one of the inspirations for doing the book. I had met her back in 1991. I was doing a project on documenting traditional justice called a Hiklik. We had our own court system, and through my teachings regarding a Hiklik, that led into the journey into this book. And so she wrote the foreword, and then we had the Cook's Ferry Indian Band who wrote the afterword, because they also provided some assistance and guidance. And in reference to James Tate, yes, he did do a lot of work documenting our stories during the early historic days, and his work is still referenced, and it provides some context to the stories. And so there's a lot of information out there regarding our stories, and I didn't want to get into like a comparison of stories, because each story sort of stands, whether it's just a small story or a very long story, each story stands on its own as a teaching and as a guide. And these stories can help inform various processes regarding justice, dealing with child and family relations, and so on. So there's a lot of modern uses or contemporary uses to the stories, and but I don't want to say that they are law, because there's a lot of effort to say, well, this is the law. The law is a Shema word, a white person word, and these are our teachings, and a lot of the teachings are based upon our language. And so you have to look at, or have to hear the language, understand the language, to really decipher those teachings. And I think it's really changed over time as well. And so, so I think, I don't know if we're into question time period now, or
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you were, as you mentioned, you were 23 years old.
Yes.
And you went on this journey and got to spend that time. I know that many of us will never get that opportunity to spend that much time with people with that depth of knowledge and language. And so part of our work around this is trying to provide people who won't get that opportunity advice on how they can move ahead in their own understanding of reconciliation, for want of a better term. You can think of, we've got people who are joining us from libraries and from banking and from ministries and from all sorts of different sectors. What's some advice that you might give them, thinking back to you being 23, on how they can start on a journey that will increase their understanding around language or land or law?
Right. I think it's everybody. We all live in different communities, and everybody has neighbors, and likely all across Canada, you're living with amongst various nations that have their own distinct identity, way of life, and their own stories. And quite often, it's just trying to support the community. Respect and honor, and attend different cultural events. And sometimes it's just like listening. That's the thing about the collection here, is just being able to listen and be patient, and appreciate what you're learning, and looking at how you can embrace this for having a good day, or dealing with your own path, or towards wellness or healing. And for me personally, because my dad attended residential school, we can observe loss of culture, loss of language, but we have the ability to change things and make things better. And so it's just trying to be very supportive And it's just not just on like one day, because we all celebrate Indigenous Day on June 21st. It's every day, and every day trying to help out. So I know that watching the news last night, they had a profile on homelessness, and a lot of the homeless people are Indigenous, and trying to find compassion regarding how do we get here today as a society? How can we support the family and community? And so it's going to take a lot of uplifting to move forward. And so the stories is ground our people to the territory, and show the relations about how we work together as one, and is trying to empower one another, and yeah.
I think that's good advice. It's also advice that our elders give us here is those one-liners like, go help out, go help that person, go help that family. How can you help out? Even if you're little, right? You can still help out in some way, shape, or form. One of the things that strikes me about the stories, especially the creation stories there, is the depth of time that those go back to before human time, right? That explain how things were at that time and the relationship to today. There was one of the stories that was shared in there that just talks about the earliest time when the land was being formed, and how it might not look the same. And I know some of the Secwepemc neighbors have also shared stories about when what's now the Fraser River didn't connect, right? So it just talks about the depth of time that Secwepemc people have been in that place, and before what might be recognized as the landforms of today, even, that those stories are placed that far back in time.
Yes, certainly these stories provide connection to land, and it's stories talk about how certain physical features were transformed and shaped, and even having footprints in certain areas, and why things are today, and why things are sort of like a place called Mudslide, how that place came to be because of the battles between Shinkeap and the Transformers. And so just regarding different events that happened, and you have physical place marks in the territory that all have names, and this sort of that's what they say. You talk about time immemorial. The elders never used that concept. It was all this protect the time before people. And there's like no stories of going back to the coming over from the ice bridge from Siberia or things like that. It's just we're all land based here, and so this provides that special relationship to land, and just every day there's a teaching for the different seasons. Something that we learn about is the going through the different seasons and different things that are coming out now for harvesting, and like if like Estuena, which is just coming out now, which is a plant that's harvested, and just there's different timing for everything. And I think some teachings were not about being greedy or what happens if you're lazy, and so certain teachings like that are just they're gentle reminders about how to conduct yourself.
Steph pops up a question in our chat that comes up quite regularly, and some of it's on a legal side too. But Steph says, "I'd like to hear more about how you handled the informed consents at that time, and any advice from your experience on ensuring protecting Indigenous knowledge, because as you know, sometimes that knowledge in a Western world ends up in a book." And then people can feel free to use it however they might use it in an internet kind of connected world. Whereas on the Indigenous side, those stories are animate. They have a life and a value and an agency of their own. So it's those different concepts, I guess, of worldviews and how they cross. But let's go back to the informed consent and protecting Indigenous knowledge.
Yeah, so when when I first provided, or when UBC Press commit to publishing the book, they required informed consent, which is great. And they gave a very legalistic form that had all the legal language. And so we took steps to have it pared down into plain language that still provided informed consent, but more in a plain language, more understandable process. And I think the other thing is that we also had a shwawam, a community gathering to honor everybody, which is part of the in doing things. It's always going back to the community to having the community acknowledge and to honor everybody. So we had a big gathering, and so the thing about informed consent is that dealing with English or colonial terms, about copyright, intellectual property, about who owns the story. And so you have Canadian law regarding copyright. If you record, you become the copyright holder. If you take the photograph, you become the copyright holder. Whereas in our tradition, if you are the storyteller, you own the story, you have the right to share the story on your terms. And so there's a bit of a difference. And so in dealing with it over time, we always say that copyright vests with the person telling the story. They have a right to control their story, and they have a right to decide how it's passed on, and they have a right to revoke their consent. And so, so even with the publication, we actually had one elder who decided not to share her stories. So we actually had those stories pulled out, and that was fine. We honor that, and then nowadays you have the collections of the tapes, which have been digitized. So I had one of the sons of one of the storytellers ask me, "Can I have the tape?" I said, "Sure, we'll send that to you by USB drive." And so really the family has the control of the stories about how to disseminate it. But with the book, it's you have a book that's published, so it's there forever. But it's the elders knowing that is there to provide stories for education for the children and students, and for the community. So it's just there's a lot of superstitions and so on, and even being recorded is there's a lot of superstitions regarding being photographed, recorded. I think our elders have come a long way because now they're actually on Zoom all the time now. So, but even with our first voices, it's all pastor protected, so that you have to be a member to listen to the recordings. So things have evolved. It's really up to the individual, to the community, to the nation, to decide on the protocols and the parameters, and just be respectful of those teachings.
We've had Dr. Sakesh Henderson on a couple of times talking about the challenges of Indigenous knowledge and law, and finding a place for it in a Western legally dominated society. And it's even something as simple as just being recognized as a human being has been a challenge over the years. And so thanks for that, because it's going to be ongoing, right, of how we honor our knowledge keepers and honor the information, whether it's through stories that they choose to share, and keep it in a good way.
Yes, and sort of the current challenge nowadays is the new social media platforms of Facebook and other applications, and should this knowledge be transmitted to the broader world? And that's always a live issue regarding gatekeeping, and how do you share it to the members, and having it shared respectfully. So even with our Facebook site, it's all password protected, or not password. You have to be invited to be on, and we just ask that if a elder is sharing their video on a teaching, that the video not be shared or copied onto other social media platforms. Yeah,
we had one elder in one of our places was sharing plant knowledge, and we asked him at the beginning, can we record what you're about to share? And his answer was, no, how about you just listen? I thought that was such a beautiful, blunt way to say it. No, not today. You could record me some other day, but today you're just going to sit and listen. I'll practice that for a while. So that was lovely. It's actually, he told us that where Lawrence was sharing his song with us this morning when Lucine showed us that. Now, I wanted to just tell you too that you really honored the storytellers in this book. When I read the stories, I could hear the cadence. I know that some of them were told in Khatmatin and some of them told in English, but it just reminded me of all the opportunities I've had to listen to people who are fluent in their language, speak to me in English and tell me a story, and just the work that their mind is doing to try to change such a rich, beautiful language into English for me, what a gift. So I wanted to just let you know that you really did honor them in the way that the stories were shared in here. Just again, the cadence of them, the way that the sentences were put together and how they told those stories really came through well. And so I could hear their voices as I was reading it.
Yes, and sometimes during the storytelling, the elders would use different expressions using their hands quite a bit, or even changing their face, talk like Shinkayap and like going like this, and then they'd actually sound like Shinkayap and like Coyote. And so there's a lot of contacts, and I'm hopeful that maybe the next generation will maybe use some videos or even cartoons to update the stories and make them more relevant to today's generation. And so there's a lot of, the younger generation have a lot of neat ideas, and it's really up to them to sort of move it forward and support them.
I've got one last question for you too, and some of our guests take it differently and are quite surprised. And I know that this was done quite a while ago when you did this, but one of the things I want to ask you is, what did you learn about yourself along the way because of this project?
Right. I guess it's a lot of, patience and a lot of human connections or relationships, and some of them go back generations, and so about how some are very accepting and some have superstitions, and it's about you try your best, and it's just it took a lot of work, took a lot more work than I anticipated. So when you start something, you just never know how it'll go, and just took a lot more time than I had fully anticipated, which is fine. And it was just it's nice to give back and to share, and so just trying to be humble, but over time I just learned that it's out there. It's if people have been very supportive, and so a lot of acts of kindness out there, and it just and for me it also I learned that there's a lot to learn. It's never ending. So and so there's like so much to learn, and so it's just it's just like learn. So
yeah, I think that's good advice around being a person. We've learned that a lot along the way. Is just be humble.
Yeah, and then now because I'm getting as we mature, it's like how to get back to the community of teachings and how to make it more relevant. So and so sort of my next phase is to try to find other processes to share our way of life, so that the next generation can learn and work with with a team and work with the elders and keep things moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that too, and I think that's what drives Stephanie and myself and Lawrence too. Is that we've been gifted so many teachings along the way that we have to find ways that we can contribute that back to the community that looked after us so well.
Mhm.
Well, Darwin, it's been terrific having you on here. I was thinking about Lawrence out in the middle of the forest because I can look across and see where he is out of my office window here, a few miles away. But I know the internet connection would be pretty sketchy there, which is often a good thing when you're working on canoe transformations as he is. But I want to raise my hands to you and say thanks so much for bringing those voices of the Nakamak storytellers forward in this book. Thanks for the work that you continue to do to support the language revitalization that goes on across your territories. And also thanks for the work that you do working with our nations in the legal sector as well across British Columbia.
Okay, good day for having me, and wish you have a great afternoon and move forward. Homas.
Okay, it was, it's up.